Welcome to the Point of Focus podcast. Jer's back to talk everything into reality.
We'll be back every week, all season long.
With your host, Jeremy Piccott.
Focusing only on things that we want to get bigger in our lives.
Made by coaches and collaborators coming together for the purpose of co-creating.
Enjoy or join the in-depth discussion, information, and how-tos.
Stay tuned for another episode of the Point of Focus podcast.
Excellent. So basically, the whole point of today was to learn how to read labels, right? My name's Jeremy Piccott. I'm not sure if any of your audience knows who I am or not, but I'm a nutrition therapist, and that must sound incredibly boring. But it's going to be completely different than you're expecting. And you could lose 10 pounds in 30 days just from implementing what we're going to learn here. So sometimes I have a conversation with people, I'll run into them 6 weeks later, and they look completely different. And I didn't even know that they had implemented the stuff that I taught them. So it's really, really cool. The whole thing when you're reading a label is to see what's in it, right? So do you have any labels there now?
Yeah, I have a few.
Okay.
So I brought with me Kodak cakes.
Okay.
Which are branded as like protein pancakes or protein waffles. And I have the label here ready.
Amazing. So before we actually go ahead and read the label, how many calories do you burn a day?
I have no idea. I don't
idea.
calculate that. No.
Right. So before we look at the label, we have to ask ourselves, why are we reading the label?
Mm-hmm.
Is it because you're curious what's in there, or like, do you have a reason why you'd want to see that?
Yeah, I think more or less of, I guess there's like some words like fat, and, you obviously don't want too much sodium in your food. Things like that could be bad for the heart. So those are maybe things to be aware of for me, but I guess I don't truly look at labels and analyze them and, see what's actually going to help my body per se.
Yeah, it's because we don't really have a gas gauge at this point. Everybody burns a certain amount of calories. And I like to do this in paint to keep this super simple. I do it intentionally. So everybody's got a certain amount of calories that they burn. The problem is they don't know what that is half the problem. The second half of the problem is they don't know what it looks like in food.
Yeah.
So if you don't know how much gas to put in your car, and you don't know how much gas your car burns, what are the odds that you're going to put in the right amount of gas?
Not accurately.
Very slim to none, right? Sometimes you're going to put in too much. Sometimes you're not going to put in enough. And the thing about the human body is it will just store gas if you put in too much, or if you put in, that's too much. If you put in too little gas, it'll actually store fat as well, because it doesn't trust you, so it stores gas for later.
Okay.
Right? So it's important to know first, what do you burn in a day? Like, that's really, really, really important, because if you know that, you can just put in $18 worth of gas if you burn 20, and your body will do what you want it to do. If you want to go down a little bit. Like, does that make sense? Like, you can adjust once you have a good starting place and you understand, this is what I burn a day and this is what it looks like on a plate.
Yes. Okay.
Right? So 99% of people would like to lose fat. They would like to tone up a bit. Right? Like, this is almost everybody that comes to somebody that wants to change their body. It's usually to tone up, lose a bit of fat. The occasional people do want to get bigger, in which case you would just play in the upper range. But there's a magic window here for fat loss. And it's plus minus 500 to 1,000 calories. So here's 1,000 calories. Less per day, and here would be 500, let's say. All right, and this line is exactly what you burn.
Okay.
So essentially, when you understand this mentality, you have like guidelines where any food fits into this system. And you can eat whatever you want as long as it's organized properly. And let's say somebody, well, let's go with you. I already figured out your numbers. Oh, but I've deleted them because I put the Zoom link in. That's okay. You were, guess, how many calories do you think you burn a day?
I don't know, 2,000, 2,500.
Wow, good for you.
I don't know.
2547 is actually very close to what you burn. Now, like you can be plus minus a little bit. It's not a big deal because we're going with a starting point. So you burn 2547. I'll move this over in a second. But we're actually going to start you at 2047. And this is where I start. 90% of people that ever come to me is 500 calories less. So
Okay.
what do you burn a day? You burn 2,500 calories at 47. Anybody that comes to me is eating less than this. Like most people are not overeating. It's actually a problem of under eating on a very consistent basis. Right? So you could safely go down as far as 1547. Anything lower than 1547, and you're going to be in starvation mode, and your body's going to want to pack on the pounds. Or if you eat more than that again, right? So how often do you eat? Like most people, their life is set up so they wake up, they could have breakfast, they start work, they get a break usually 3 hours in, a break for lunch 3 hours in, they're done 3 hours later, and you're home. Is your life set up that you could eat breakfast, snack, lunch, snack, dinner, or dinner, evening snack?
I think a little bit has changed since the pandemic. So since working from home, I think I have a little bit more organization with that. But I do find myself sometimes I'm not hungry during breakfast time or something. But I can do it to where I can snack in the middle of the day, or eat, 3 to 4 meals a day or so.
Okay, cool. I like to think of two animals, a bear and a horse. So a bear can go 6 months without food. And this is kind of the equivalent to going to lunchtime without food. We're not running on food, we're running on stored fat. So our body wants to store fat because it knows that that's how it's going to have to survive tomorrow. Whereas a horse, even a pet horse, you have to feed it 3 times a day. And if they're in the wild, they're going to eat a little tiny bit. They're going to graze throughout the day. Because of that, their body runs off the nutrition that it supplies it, and it doesn't have to store a whole bunch of body fat. Right? So the reason that people don't get hungry is because their metabolism is slowed down because they've trained their body to not be hungry. Right?
Okay. Mm-hmm.
So if you were to start eating breakfast when you woke up and have a small meal, which we'll break these down to, we'll make this more easy and simple. Every 3 hours, your body would start to switch. It would start to run on the nutrition that you're providing it, and it would learn that it doesn't need to store anything, and it gets rid of it. So it's like your metabolism speeds up, and I'm talking like within the first 2 weeks, you're noticing that every 3 hours you're getting hungry. You're like, oh man, it's time for food, right? So essentially, this number is the one we're going to focus on.
Okay.
But we're going to break it down further because calories aren't precise enough. There's different styles of calories. So a carbohydrate calorie is going to be the equivalent to gasoline in your car. The protein calories are going to be the equivalent to pieces to repair your vehicle as you go through your day. And the fat is going to be the equivalent to your oils.
Okay.
So you need a certain amount of gas, you need a certain amount of parts, and you need a certain amount of oil. So it's very important, the ratio that we break this down into, because if you're just like, well, I got to go to work today and I didn't put in any gas, but I put in 5 times the oil, why isn't it working, right? Like, we have to just take this into consideration. So I have this broken down. 2047 is 25, 34, 11 on a 3-hour basis. Right now, that's going to equal. So basically, if we ate the numbers that I just told you, 25, 34, and 11, that's going to be the perfect amount for you with a goal in mind, right? Would you be okay if you lost a couple pounds in the next 4 or 5 weeks? Like, would that be something that is, you're okay with that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, most people don't say no to that. Yeah. The reason I like to start 500 calories less is because it's enough of an impact to get you losing 1 pound a week. Because you're losing 500 calories a day times 7 days is 3,500 calories, which equals a pound of fat.
Okay.
Right?
And this is just for me to clarify, right? It's everyone's different.
Everyone's different, yes. But
Okay.
a pound of muscle inside my body burns the same as a pound of muscle inside your body. So that's how we're figuring this out. We're figuring out roughly how many pounds of muscle you have, roughly how many calories that's going to burn today, and then how to organize them properly, and then how to take a journey with it. So when you first learn this, you can expect to lose 1 pound of fat per week for the first 4 to 6 weeks, and then your body plateaus because it gets used to what we're doing. So then we take another 500 off, which equals 2 pounds of fat loss per week for the next 4 to 6 weeks until you plateau again. And then the step that everybody misses is how to stay lean, which is going back up close to what you burn. See, everybody wants to start a diet and just get less, and eventually it just falls apart because they miss the most important step, which is coming back up. And I like to calibrate that 200 calories less than you burn. So the pattern is minus 500, up 800, which is always at least 200 into the fat loss window.
Okay.
I hope I'm not losing people with math here. It makes sense though?
Yeah, I definitely think it makes sense. It's not very intuitive. Like, I don't think, people will probably think, well, maybe if I, drop a little bit more, but I think the science is there where you're saying that, once you've reached that point where you've plateaued again, you kind of have to give your body shock and take it back up a notch, but just enough to not, to continuously lose weight. It's just in a different method. Yeah.
So that's the pattern. And then you just repeat the cycle. So you would do phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, and then phase, you know what I mean? And you would just repeat that cycle until you were at a healthy body fat percentage or where you were satisfied. And then you kick it up to the line. And then that is like your perfect portion where your body is going to be getting exactly what it needs, which is what nobody's ever even considered, which is the whole point that I'm going around and talking about this. Because when I got that right, I went from being frustrated and working out too much to losing 60 pounds of fat, putting on 30 pounds of muscle, and having the body that I actually wanted. And all I did was change my diet. Right? So now let's take a look at the back of your box. What's in the back of your box? Now we have something to shoot for.
Okay. All right. So
and that's per meal.
Right. I don't know. Can you see that?
No, you're going to have to read it.
Oh, okay. Okay. So as far as serving size, half a cup is 53 grams. Calories is 180. So are you looking for like total carbohydrates?
We're going to look for all three because all three are going to be part of a complete meal. We're 25 carbs, 34 protein, and 11 fat.
So it's 2 grams of total fat.
Okay.
And then it's 34 grams of total carbohydrates. and it's 8 grams of protein. Okay.
So think about it now with those numbers. How much of that could you have per meal?
Half, half a serving.
Not quite, because you need 25. So if you had 34 in the serving, it would be a little bit more than half.
Okay.
Right? You're going to hit your carb capacity first.
Yes. That's why I was thinking half, because then it would give me like a little wiggle room for carbs throughout the day.
This is per meal.
Okay.
So we don't want wiggle room. What we want is your body to get used to that amount of gas. So if you woke up and had exactly those numbers for breakfast, exactly those numbers in a snack, exactly those numbers for lunch, exactly those numbers snack, exactly those numbers dinner, and a month later we change the numbers, your body's going to change too.
Okay.
Consistency is like the most important thing. Right? So
Yeah.
what I like to do at this point is I like to get out in the grocery store with people.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I like to walk around and be like, okay, let's put together 2 or 3 breakfasts that equal your numbers so you don't have to think about it.
That's
Right?
good, especially for working people. You know, it's kind of difficult trying to manage your breakfast, but if you have already those decisions made up and you can change the combinations of it, of each, just kind of to have that set meal. It's just preparing it. I think that's great. Yeah.
Absolutely. And those numbers fit into anything. So like you could have juice for breakfast with some protein, right? Like it could be, the carbs could be apples, it could be juice, it could be toast. Like there's so many different things. I like to stick with just fruits and vegetables, nuts, seeds, and meat. That's something that I've been doing for a little while now. And my body's changed completely. I went pretty much straight from source energy. So all artificial foods, flour, I've decided to cut out of my diet. And that was crazy. But I want to show you something here. I'm going to share my screen with you again.
Okay. How do you make that transition? Because I know, it can be a full change of lifestyle for some people. You grow up eating certain foods. Like I'm Hispanic, we grew up eating like tortillas and, lots of flour and stuff. So what are your recommendations in terms of making those transitions to being able to create that healthy habit and not just change it from one day to another, get bored and not want to ever do it again?
Well, the first is to realize what you're sensitive to. I mean, flour has punished our bodies. If you go 2 weeks without eating flour, you're going to feel a swelling leave you that you haven't felt in a long time, perhaps your entire life. Like when you decide to go gluten-free, it's not long before it's like your organs deflate. If I were to put some flour inside my body right now, you would watch my body swell up just like a piece of dough because it's been without it for a while. So it started with me with flour, going gluten-free. And when you go gluten-free, you start to realize that gluten is in almost every single thing that you love. Like if it's wrapped in bread, that's a gluten-filled lunch, right? So for me, it started with gluten-free. And then I started slipping into the gluten-free products. And I was getting the same reaction. I would swell right up. I would get bloated. And I've come to a point that it's more important how I feel than what I put in my mouth. And I enjoy my diet thoroughly. I wake up, I have eggs and fruit, right? And fruits, nuts. I like cottage cheese. Lactose-free cottage cheese does not swell me up. So it's a slippery slope. When you start to feel nourished over a bad reaction, and then you start to make your choices on, wow, did that make me feel good? Or did that make me feel horrible? Right? Yeah. So for me, it started with flour. And then it was a slippery slope that I was just like, you know what? If it didn't grow, I'm not putting it in my body anymore.
Okay.
With the one exception of cottage cheese and like a plant-based protein powder. Those are the only things that didn't originate as a seed or something that literally grew out of live cells. Right?
Yeah,
I recommend everybody do a flour detox, 21 days, just do it and just feel the difference. And then if you go have a piece of pizza on that 22nd day, you're going to feel what that does to you.
Yeah.
Right? So it takes 10 days for somebody that's completely addicted to sugar to get rid of that sugar craving. It's a biological thing. It's a 10-day thing. If you can go 10 days without it, you can kick it out of your diet. I know that from experience. If you go 21 days without flour, you're going to feel completely different. That being said, when I first got on this style of diet and eating, I grew up on Pop-Tarts and Joe Louis. So I, like, every day, chocolate chip cookies, Pop-Tarts, Joe Louis, that was like what I ate. And then like SpaghettiOs and stuff. So I did the same mentality where I hit those numbers, but it was all out of junk food, really. It still worked. Yeah. I lost 60 pounds. I put on 30 pounds in muscle. 90% of my clients still eat gluten.
Okay.
I'm the only one that's taken it this far and this extreme, but I've also pushed the limits of this diet the most too. And I know that in a McDonald's hamburger, there's 32 grams of carbs, 18 grams of fat, and 9 grams of fat and 18 grams of protein. So like, you can factor in anything, right?
Mm-hmm.
I like to show this to people because this is the product after the grocery store. So if we were to hit a grocery store together, we've already figured out where you are. Okay. Right? What we would do is just walk around and get a couple days of meals that you don't have to think about. So this person wanted a protein shake, some juice, and some olive oil. She's like, I don't have time for breakfast, right? No problem. Have this on your way out the door.
Okay.
A couple hours later, this was prepared. Day 2. And if you read this, it's very, very like 2/3 of a cup of brown rice, 2.36 ounces of salmon or tuna. It's like a can.
Okay.
Very reasonable, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So you're not starving throughout the day. It's just more or less, how you distribute those.
No, because you eat this meal and then you don't think about food for 3 hours and then your body goes, oh, I'm hungry. And then you eat this meal. And then 3 hours later, your signal's going, oh, time to eat. Like I could set my watch to my belly. So essentially, and then also you could substitute in anything you want. So as long as you could tell if it was a carb, if it was a protein or a fat, then you could fit it into your numbers. But what we have to start doing is start considering how much do I burn and how much do I put in my body? Because when we don't, we end up in a place we don't want to be.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, that makes sense.
So that's what I do. And like, as far as reading labels goes, let's pull up any food right now. Pick a food. Let's go banana. Say it wasn't on the list. You just have to Google it one time. And now we know 23 grams. Look at that. You need 24.
Yeah.
A banana is a perfect portion of carbohydrates for you. So okay. Now if you were to have a source of protein and a source of fat with it, essentially you could have that every 3 hours and lose a pound of fat this week.
Okay.
Without even stepping on a treadmill. You know what I mean? Is it making sense?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so you're tailoring these like carbs, fats, proteins, and these are all per meal, and you have 5 of these a day, and that's how you break it down. Okay.
Yeah, I like to start even in the beginning, and then I like to run this as the fat loss cycle. There is advanced splits as well, but but I don't teach that until later because it gets confusing, and you don't have to do it. Just keep all the meals simple. All you have to remember is those 3 numbers. And as you go through your day, just read the label. What are you looking for? You're looking for how much carbs is in there, how much protein's in there, and how much fat's in there.
Okay.
And then you're just trying to make combinations that equal that.
Okay.
Right?
Makes sense. Yeah.
So I don't know if that's something you're interested in or not, in going to the grocery store and walking around and doing some actual label reading. But that's an option. If you'd like to do that, I'd be happy to do that with you.
Also, feel free to share your contact information. I'll share it with the group as well. So that way, if anyone's interested on the one-on-one experience and going through the grocery shopping, I think it could really benefit quite a few of us to be able to do that and go through that process with you, and learn about our bodies, because the more you know about yourself, the more you can tailor things to benefit you. So
well, then you know how to make your body do what you want, right? I'd like to be a little bit leaner. Okay, cool. I'm just going to do this phase for a little bit longer. You know what I mean? I'd like to put on a little bit muscle. Then you can actually play in the upper range too.
Yeah, and this is like the science that like bodybuilders use too, where if they want to gain 1 pound of fat or 1 pound of muscle, and like they know exactly what to do just by manipulating those numbers. So just, I think definitely knowing your body in that aspect can really help you, get to the goal that you want. Yeah,
absolutely. Like that's how they do it. That's how they all do it. Like they all get ready for the competition on the same day. They're all following the same formula. This is the formula.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, this is all amazing information. I'll definitely share your contact information with the group, so that if they want the one-on-one experience, I think that would be amazing for people to go grocery shopping with you, have that experience, have that one-on-one coaching, because it's definitely needed. Noom can only do so much, or like apps can only do so much at the moment. It's really having that consultation aspect that I think could really benefit someone.
Absolutely. It's super affordable too. So I have a special on right now. It's $97 to get your foot in this door and try it out and test drive the system.
Awesome. All right. Sounds great. Is there anything else that I can help with, or?
No, I mean, that's pretty much the whole point of reading a label, is to see how much of it you can have.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the shift that I want people to make. And when they take that into consideration, they can have the body that they want really, really quickly.
Yeah. And it does. It starts with the mind. It starts with the mindset. We're actually currently looking into pivoting our startup because we've been looking back at our customer discoveries, and we're seeing, a lot of people are talking about how health and wellness helps with their mental health, how they feel, throughout the day. And, just kind of, instead of like craving like chips and soda pop, like crave to feel good, crave to, want to live longer. So I think it just starting with that mindset, we're going to start doing group therapies in our group, and just trying to see, some of the, people who want to come out and share their stories, and just, really motivate each other, and just talk about real things, like, hey, I grew up like this. I grew up eating these types of foods. Like, changing that mindset is not easy, but it does start with the mind. It does start knowing about yourself, and it does start by taking baby steps like this, and just, making, like you said, making substitutions, or, just knowing your body in its own. So I really do appreciate your knowledge, and, with sharing that with this group. And I really hope that, people take advantage of this opportunity to really learn about themselves.
It's great once you do know, because it takes away guilt. You can have whatever you want, and you're never feeling guilty again, because you're like, oh, I shouldn't have had that, because you're like, oh no, I should have had that. Yeah, absolutely. So many reasons that I'll continue to talk about this for a long time.
Yeah, wonderful. Well, I hope we could do this again, maybe on different topics. I think there's a lot of misconceptions about like supplements, what to look for in supplements. So if that's something that you're interested in, maybe we could do that at a later time as well. But I can't thank you enough for doing this for our group, and I'll go ahead and share the recording with them so that way they can contact you.
Sounds good. Thanks
All
for
right.
having me.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful day.
You as well.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
The Point of Focus podcast.